Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Well, good evening, everybody. Yes, it's the Freedom Link. And yes, we haven't been here for a while. But no, it wasn't our fault. And it was actually nobody's fault. It was great. Well, no, anyway, we're here. We're back. And thank goodness, everybody, hopefully everybody tuning in is still above water, that they haven't lost anything to the deluge that has at least inundated the Northeast. I can't believe Montpelier was underwater, dude. That was nuts. Never seen that before.
We're going to have to call this the Great Northeastern Deluge.
Yeah.
And
4 inches of rain the other day, dude, in 3 hours.
It's wild how much rain you guys have been getting up there.
Yeah.
I've been following it because, I'm a big weather guy. I like to track weather. And
that's
all
why
that
I like
stuff,
talking like this with you, yes, because I know you like weather. And let me tell you something, too. And how come you can get it, but all these meteorologists that keep telling us, like, well, okay, it's going to be this or it's going to be that today, and it's going to be this temperature. It's never. They're wrong like half the time. Like, how many people actually believe what they see when they watch that weather in the morning? I don't.
First, I think it depends on the quality of your weatherman. Like if you live in an area that doesn't normally see a lot of crazy weather, your weatherman kind of I would say let's just say they're a little they just kind of phone it in, if you will.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the weathermen here in the Midwest are pretty hardcore, and they're.
Well, they have to be. I would have to be. Now that's like, I would say, the equivalent of spec war in the meteorological community, at least in the United States, because you have to be on your toes with the tornadoes, and the fact that those are really kind of on the spur of the moment type of things where you're talking minutes accuracy you really need in order to give people as much notice, right?
They really pay attention to like the computer models and the dynamics and the ingredients in the atmosphere, ahead of severe weather days. Because I mean, you got to think about it. You think, well, they're just weathermen, but no, they're actually like really providing a service that saves people's lives, right? Because you have to be able to warn people out ahead of a storm and let them know, hey, this is going to happen. You need to take shelter, and if not, you're putting your life in danger.
That's where I see the most value, right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, a lot of these, especially these older weathermen, that have been these veteran
the seasoned
weathermen,
type, yes.
the seasoned weathermen around here, they're kind of held in like a high regard and respected, because there's been so many times where they've like saved people's lives by warning
I can imagine,
and all of that stuff. So I think it just kind of depends on where you live, and if you're in an area where like you usually don't see a lot of crazy weather and a lot of I think the weathermen just kind of they just come in, they just kind kind of glance at the thing.
Well,
Like, it's gonna do
but
this.
I wonder if that's what makes me think. Is it has it become more of an entertainment thing? Almost like people expect to see it. They expect something. Let's put somebody up there with a flashy personality or able to get that across. And but I mean, if you look at a lot of the people, I just don't see where somebody like you couldn't go in and do the exact same thing. You know what I mean? It just doesn't matter. Or even better, AI. I think at this point, AI can probably do it. You know?
Right.
I don't know. And I'm just saying that I just feel like they're wrong more than they're right, and they often blame the earth changes that we see.
Right.
And I think there's validity to that. Don't you?
Yeah, we definitely are seeing earth changes. It's not what the mainstream is telling us is what's
but I'm saying that if you have weather models, and those weather models are looking at, say, 150 years of weather, because I don't know how far back they go, but I'm just guessing. And that 150 years was some of the most stable weather that the earth has seen in some time. When you deviate from that, those models aren't going to be as accurate as they once were.
Right, when you're feeding the model data, that's nothing but stable data, and then all of a sudden things become unstable.
Right,
it doesn't know how to handle it. Right? Yeah, no. I get. Yeah, and you know,
but these people they're just spitting out what this thing is telling them, right? And then they're wrong. And I wonder at what point in time they're going to start following it more in real time. You know what I mean? And to do that and have that kind of accuracy again, because of the instability of things, you almost need an AI to give you that kind of monitoring and that granularity to give you an instant picture at all times and the predictability that you're looking for.
I wonder if things are going to improve, because here just recently, within I think the past, I think it was last year maybe or the year before, they just added a brand new supercomputer to the National Weather Service model thing, and they're replacing the old supercomputer that was crunching all of the model numbers. So
I wonder if that's going to like DRMO or anything like that, and we could like pick it up. That'd be a efficient gaming computer, I'll bet you.
Right? You think it'll play Crysis, play some Doom?
Oh, dude! I think it would be a efficient gaming computer. That's all.
Right. You know, hey, maybe you could see if it can hash a little bit of cryptocurrency. I don't know.
The possibilities are endless.
Right. But you know, with all this crazy weather going on, you know, a lot of it has to do with we're moving into this El Nino weather pattern, and you know, they said we were supposed to have the super El Nino this year, right?
That's right.
And everything seems to have been happening kind of like later this year. Like severe weather season has kind of dragged on later, and at least for us, a lot of the heat waves and high temperatures, it's been fairly mild for most of the summer until this past Wednesday, when we finally are moving into our, you know, real big heat wave, the heat dome, as they call it, the giant high pressure system that sits over like New Mexico and Texas.
Right. Yep.
And then you get these crazy storms that ride along the edge of the heat dome, right, in a clockwise fashion. And so being up here in northeast Kansas, we straddle the edge of the heat dome. That's
a great place to be, isn't it? I mean, you are in the thick of it. The hell with storm chasing. You just tell the storm to come to me. That's all you do, right? That's what you do. It's like, right. Build a house right in the middle of where the storm.
So it's weird because wherever, you know, if that high pressure system fluctuates just a little bit, we could have a fairly nice day. But if it fluctuates a little bit to the north, then we're like at 105 degree temperatures with like 112 heat index. But you know, we've been getting
Go north,
slammed.
my boy, go north.
We've been getting
Go north.
slammed with these derechos, as they're called, which are basically they're very devastating, long-lived squall lines, or actually just like a line of storms, and they can sustain themselves for hundreds and hundreds of miles and do massive amounts of damage with straight line winds. And so I think it's if a line of storms sustains itself for over 250 miles with sustained damage, they call it a derecho. And we get a lot of these derechos that form out in like northern Nebraska, like the Wyoming area, and then they rip across Nebraska and then down into northeast Kansas and Missouri and Iowa and all that stuff. And they've been pretty bad this year. We've been getting a lot of derechos, and
I can imagine. Well, think about this. Okay, so this is, folks out there, if you don't know what's going on, let me try to explain it in as a simple form as possible, just so you understand, because it's really not that hard to grasp why the weather is going haywire. But the thing that you really need to understand more than anything has nothing to do with carbon. Okay, carbon is not the problem. And if it was the problem, then we wouldn't see the same heating going on other planets. So right off the bat, that kind of throws a wrench in it. The second thing is, if you look at the cyclical nature of our planet, solar system, star, galaxy, everything, it's all cyclical. And so this is part of that cyclical change. You can look at Randall Carlson, did some great research into the Greenland ice cores, and you can go and look at the ice and the history through the ice and see the different changes. And they were dramatic changes in very short periods of time. They didn't take millions of years. They took years, tens of years for these drastic swings. You know, right now, even though things are sensationalized quite a bit, and I say that because this is still normal. We haven't really got the bad stuff yet. They're making a big to-do about nothing, really, at this point. But there is some truth to it. It's true that it's getting warmer in some ways. It's not the way that they tell you it is. It's more so because our magnetic field is weakening, and because the magnetic field is weakening, and we're going into a solar maximum, we're going to have more solar particles penetrating the magnetic field and penetrating the crust and heating it up and heating up the core and the mantle and everything. This is what triggers the pole reversals that they see in the magnetic record of the rocks. So you see all this, and there is a record of this. This is something that people can't erase. Evolutionists can't erase that. They can't erase strata. They can't erase the ice cores. None of that. They can give you a fantasy tale about things, but and really the history that they pan you in school and they condition you with is not the right history. I mean, how many episodes have we done to kind of go through all the history of things? It's kind of our thing, you know? Right. It's not. And we've done this journey together. A lot of people that have listened to this, to the Freedom Link over the years, it's been a journey, all of us together. It's been nuts. And I got to tell you, this is nothing to fear right now, what you see. I mean, Mount Pilier's underwater. Well, I mean, it happens. That's all I can say. It happens. I think when things are going to get bad, you're going to know it. That's the only thing I can say, Scotty, is that we may see an uptick in hurricanes. we may see an uptick in tornadic activity and everything else. But I think it could be expected, and I think you can, and they do. They warn people. They say, hey, look, we're going to have an uptick in activity. Well, this is why. And you're going to. And then as the magnetic field continues to weaken, the Atlantic current's going to shut down, you know? And when it shuts down, something else is going to happen. Then the food chain breaks down. Then all sorts of stuff happen. See, that's when you know you're up shit's creek. Honestly.
I was just the other day looking, and they're actually pretty concerned now about hurricane season, the Atlantic hurricane season, because they recorded a water temperature off the coast of Florida of 101 degrees Fahrenheit.
So I've got something on that, believe it or not. And I want to get your take on this because I think that would be really cool. So hold on one second. Let's see. We're going to add that. And we're going to go, where are we going to go? Let's see, not that. No, this one. So phys.org, North Atlantic Ocean temperatures set record. And this is on the heels of the new record in the Mediterranean. It says the North Atlantic reached its hottest ever level this week, several weeks earlier than its unusual annual peak. And this is according to NOAA. The news comes after scientists confirmed that July is on track to be the warmest month in the record history. Searing heat intensified by global warming that has affected tens of millions of people. See, and there they go again. You don't. Okay, so this is another thing. This goes hand in hand right here. Young conservatives buy into identity politics, a shift from Republican focus on free market, small government. Look at who wrote that. That's CBS, right? So you honestly, you already see what's going on, right? It's conditioning people into this left-right paradigm. It's getting people to buy into identity politics and really establishing the fact that people need to be tied to something to identify them, which is
right. They
not what you want.
They got to make everything political, right? Even the weather is now political.
Because once you do, right? Once you say, I am this, you're boxed in. They control. Somebody's controlling you somehow. You are controlled. So the first thing you need to do is fight that. Fight that want and desire to need to belong to this, whatever this is, and just kind of free yourself from that bias, right? Doesn't mean you can't support that, but you're not that, right? So you free your mind first. So this North Atlantic thing, right? That's the first problem I have, is that searing heat intensified by global warming. Global warming. Look it's even hyperlinked. Mm-hmm, and the reason why I have a problem with that is because it's making it an identity, something people can identify with or tie their identity to. Antifa, right? Is known to be on the environmentally active side, right? So they do that. And global warming is a term and something that they tie their identity to. It gives them purpose, right?
So you have that other group, what they call themselves, the Extinction Revolution or whatever.
Yeah. Well, hey, but let me say this, though. Not to say that what they fight for, it's not true, or it is. What I'm saying is that it's the narrative.
It's the narrative that's painted around it.
Yeah, and it also gives them justification, which it's just not. Now, if you're just presenting data, well, yes, absolutely, it was the hottest. It absolutely was the hottest, and like you said, down in Florida.
And let me also point out. Let me also point out, though. They changed their methodology for recording temperatures, and they didn't tell anybody. See, they used to record air temperature, was it 2 meters above the ground?
Yes,
and
yes.
All of a sudden, they started recording ground temperatures.
Really?
And using that and going, look,
it's a lot
the
warmer.
temperature. Yeah, look, it's a lot warmer. Without informing anybody or telling anybody that they changed the methodology.
Right. But that also shows you that it's a dogma everybody's buying into. That's the whole. It's not to say that it's not happening. It's to say that they are controlling you through that, and that's the problem. So the
ocean temperature thing is wild, man.
It is wild, and it's not. Do you think it's going to get better? No, it's going to get worse. So just understand that, but also understand that they're weaponizing it to control you. And this is another one of them. Here you have Market Watch, which is what you would consider a left-wing news organization. And they're talking about right-wing college students and the fact that they're buying into identity politics, right? That's not to say that those on the other side don't believe in it, but they all do. And the issue that I have here is this is more of that polarization that we really don't need right now, because you're going to start to see a lot of crises stack up. And we're not going to have anything to really do about it outside of respond. And this isn't like a end of the world prepper thing. It's more along the lines of a very like boiling frogs type of thing. So it's kind of important that you understand as time goes on. I'd say within this election cycle. This election cycle is probably going to be one of the most, what would you say? One of the most, I don't want to call it important. They're all important, but
pivotal,
maybe.
Well, I don't know.
I'd say the last one that really, I don't know how you would have another one after this. Maybe one more. I don't know. Somehow AI is going to get involved. Somehow it's going to get involved. Somehow, some way. I just know it will, because how do you ensure the integrity of the elections anymore? And how do you get people to trust it? So one of the issues that they have, and a lot of countries actually, like Australia, for instance, Australia makes it mandatory to vote. It's compulsory, right? And they could throw you in prison if you don't. And
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So they do that for a reason. They do that because then they said everybody had a vote. Everybody had buy-in, But is that right? I don't know. When people lose faith in the electoral process, but there's no way for them to voice dissent. The only way they voice dissent is they don't participate. And so when they don't participate and you're having 25 and 30%, show up to vote, what does that mean?
In my mind, if you're not voting, it's basically a vote of no confidence.
It is. It's no confidence. And they don't want to show that. So that's a problem, and so you have an election coming up where I'm going to predict, and I could be totally wrong, but I'm going to predict that RFK Jr. is like the Ron Paul of 2012. Where
you can already see them setting them up like that, and
he had the momentum going in and smashed in Iowa, and they effing railroaded him, and on live, in real time, in the media, everywhere, they just stole it from him, and that was when I learned that no matter how hard you try, or how much you think you can make change in that toxic ass process that they have, you're not going to do it. The only way that you can make change is to not participate. Don't do it. Don't buy into it. I know they say, well, you should have voted. No, it doesn't make a hill of beans. Doesn't.
It's crazy because, like, if you look at our system, right, we only have two parties, the Democrats
That's
and the
right.
Republicans, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at a country like Russia, right? The big bad Ruskies, and if you look it up, I mean, they have like 7 or 8 different political parties that all have like representation. So it's
you gotta first and foremost, you gotta get lobbying, and you gotta get the corporate money out.
right.
You have to. And if that is allowed to continue, and that's the problem, when Citizens United passed the decision, the Supreme Court decision, when was that? That was like 2008-ish was Citizens United. And that gave corporations constitutional rights. That decision said people are corporations and corporations are people.
Right.
And that opened the floodgates. That was the ability to start super PACs. That really took away the little guy's ability to make change in a very... It just made us very a lot less effective, let's just say. Not to say that you still don't have a voice, but I think that voice is better served just not participating in that broken ass process. And this is a good reason why. Because first of all, these poor people, they go to these conferences, and I mean, it is just like hero worship. And they, it's almost like going to the Baptist church. Honest to God, man. Their hands are up and it's hallelujah and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, and then the collection plate goes around, right? It's an old model. It really is. It's an old model, but it works really well. It works really well. And these people get roped in. It's no different than organized religion, Scotty. It's absolutely no different.
And I mean, look, this is when, we have to start talking about like cult of personality, stuff and things like, right. And people just get wrapped up in these movements and the leaders of these movements. And, you see it all throughout history, right? I mean, it's happened time and time again. And, it happens on both sides.
Yeah, and people can't see the forest through the trees.
Right.
Because there's you're so tunnel visioned, and you just become cultish, controlled. Here's the other thing too, is it's really been funny lately, is that I've seen the resurgence of conspiracy theorists, that term again. And it's funny because you would think they would get smart enough to not be using that term anymore, because how many times have they tied things to conspiracy theorists, and how many times have those conspiracy theorists been right on the money every damn time? Roni, the son of LeBron James, Roni James, right?
Right.
Just has a heart attack at USC at a practice, right? So here's the issue that you have right now. Of course, USC mandates full compliance with the vaccination schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But
very interesting, right? Like, so what was it last year?
A lot of young people are dropping dead or experiencing acute myocarditis, among other things. Blood clots. There was that country singer here recently that got hospitalized for blood clots. Really? All of a sudden, all of these young people, dude, the life insurance companies are quaking in their boots because they didn't plan for this. Their premiums don't account for this. And there are more young people dying now than ever before. Excess deaths are up across the globe. Now, that didn't just happen overnight. That wasn't bats, right? That wasn't bats. Right. And of course, we all know what the truth is. We've known for a long time And we know now, but conspiracy theorists are starting to peddle that stuff again. And wouldn't you know that RFK Jr. is one of them? And all he's asking for is full transparency. That's it. That's it.
So we had the incident last year, right, with Damar Hamlin, right, from the Bills.
Correct.
He drops down on the field, and of course, oh no, he was hit in the chest, and it caused him to,
Sure.
right. Now you've got LeBron James's son going into cardiac arrest.
Yep.
And you have all of these high school and college athletes that are, just falling over.
I mean, they're not all
on the
USC,
field.
dude. They're not all USC.
Right.
They don't have like a AED right there. They don't have the facilities right there. So a lot of these young people are dropping and not coming back.
Right.
This is the problem that we have. And it was a result of not enough research and rushing these things too fast. And now people are going to pay the price for it. The other thing is this spike protein thing. It's scary as hell, and it's not going away. It's like a forever chemical, and they can't figure out how to stop that thing from replicating and reproducing. So this is causing a lot of issues with a lot of people. Now, the issue you have, if you want to get any sort of justice or truth or remedy or anything, the pharmaceutical companies own everything. They do, because they own the lobbying and the senators and the representatives. They own the media, because who is on CNN for advertisers?
Right.
I mean, look, you just need to look at the freaking commercials. Oh, it's terrible. It makes me
when
sick.
the quote unquote news takes a commercial break, it's brought to you by Pfizer, or brought to you by Merck, brought to you by AstraZeneca, or Johnson and Johnson, or whatever.
You're not going to get right. You might as well be asking, what was it? IG Farben during World War II. Yeah. What are your what is that thing you're working on with the tailpipe back there? Oh, yes. Well, we're going to get the truth from them. It was a gigantic conglomerate. It was basically a monopoly in Germany. They could do whatever they want,
Wait, are you saying IG? Are you saying IG Farben was in cahoots with the government and colluded with the government of Germany?
Paul Warburg was their CEO, dude. I mean, come on. Jekyll Island and everything else. Oh no, he wasn't a control freak. But that's what I'm saying. It's like,
right.
Once you know the truth, that's great, but you're not going to get the truth. As hard as you try, you're not. So there are people now that do that. And those people that show interest are immediately hijacked and brought into these young conservatives, or, the liberals for a new generation, or whatever. And their identities are stolen from them immediately. And they become drones of these movements and these organizations.
Right. They just become cogs in the machine, basically.
Oh, it is sickening. It's sickening. And then you have the media that goes ahead and polarizes it. So that's why, I think it's important that everybody do their best to try and free themselves of that and understand that what you're seeing is 100% psyop, mind control, propaganda being pushed on you ad nauseum, and eventually it breaks you down, and you're just like, oh, okay, whatever. It's the easy way, but it's not the right way. There's a food service giant, Compass, right? They're being sued right now. And it's all about the mind control, the programming, and pushing an agenda instead of just letting it be, letting it go. I started a new job the last couple of weeks, and I'm at a company now that, believe it or not, has a DEI, big into diversity, equity, inclusion, right? And I think that I think it's been hijacked a little bit, the term. I can't stand the fact that that has to have a term. It used to just be called love and respect. That's what it was. And now they have all these fancy words for it. But where I work now, that's what it's all about. It's it, love and respect. It's not about color. It's not about disability. It's not about anything. If you can work, they'll find a place for you. And it's nuts. So, Compass, right? One of the biggest food service companies in the United States, North Carolina, out of Charlotte. This is Zero Hedge. Company had more than 280,000 employees, $20.1 billion in revenue. Bennett, they do food service at Dodger Stadium, like Snapchat, Disney Studios. So they're kind of like that, right? Compass Group PLC parent company is based in the UK. So Courtney Rogers was in Charlotte, worked there. She was hired in August 2021, and she was given the job title Recruiter Internal Mobility Team. And her responsibilities included the processing of internal promotions, which encompassed posting job listings, reviewing applications, conducting interviews, writing and sending offer letters. So she's an HR person, right? So Compass creates this program called Operation Equity. And in March 2022, it launches it. And this whole Operation Equity is supposed to be a diversity program that offers employees special training and mentorship and the promise of a promotion upon graduation. And so the lawsuit was filed by for Miss Rogers in the U.S. Southern District Court of California by the Thomas More Society, because the participation in the program was restricted to women and people of color. So white men weren't allowed to participate and receive the associated benefits of training, the mentorship, and the guaranteed promotion. And so, according to the lawsuit says, quote, by calling Operation Equity, the company used a euphemistic and false title to hide the program's true nature. The program would more accurately be called White Men Need Not Apply program, because it is an example of outright racial balancing, which is patently unlawful, and is the kind of program, quote, promoted by people who harbor racial animus against white men. And that continues. So Miss Rogers claims she informed management that high-level employees said of the program, quote, this is the direction the world is going. Jump on the train or get run over. And we are not here to appease the old white man, unquote. So Miss Rogers claimed she also informed management that the program was illegal and requested that she be allowed as an accommodation, which most companies will do for you. Of course, not for illegal things, because they shouldn't be doing that in the first place. But she asked for an accommodation because that Operation Equity violated her ethical beliefs, which probably also violated the ethical standards of the company as well. But management assured her that she would be exempted from participating in it and that she would not be retaliated against for sharing her concerns with management. Now, in November 2022, Miss Rogers was fired.
Oh,
and
really?
Of course. And you know why? Well, she was fired because she refused to participate in the program that discriminated against on the basis of race and sex, even though she received positive performance feedback from her supervisors and colleagues. The stated reason for termination was failure to perform job duties. So here's where it gets interesting. And this is this is not the first company that's run afoul of the law. So in the United States, we have what's called Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that alone basically levels the playing field for everybody. And when you see something like that, that's an instant Title VII violation, which
Right.
if the way you typically handle that is you would go to your labor board and, you would initiate a complaint. The state is one pathway, but you have multiple pathways. So because of this is a federal breach too. But I mean, that company was, you think a global company would be a little more proper than to do that. But it's almost like they feel like they're above the law, Scotty. I don't know what else to think, because you would think by now, being a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation, that they would understand the law. But they're trying to force the behaviors through the private sector. These change agents become CEOs of these corporations, and then they start pushing the values down. And why?
Joe,
Why?
That's because a lot of the times they are above the law. They very rarely ever face repercussions for the things that they do, especially when they have the lobbying power and the backing of whatever regime is in control of the government at the time. They can get away, or they feel they can get away with all of this stuff, right? I mean, yep. This goes back to like our two-tier justice system, where and look, I mean, whatever happened to basing somebody off the content of their character and the ability that they have to do the job. It has nothing to do with skin color or sex or anything like that. It's your qualifications, and if you're able to do the job, right?
Sexuality come into play in the workplace. It should have no bearing on it. The same with same with color or anything else. Who cares? And
I don't get it. It's so wild that we are reverting back to segregation.
Yes. No, it's not though. It's part of the plan to control, to break things down. It's like propaganda meets the Soviet Union 101. It's like and I you see it happening in real time, and it's just sickening because people are so buried into their phones and their gadgetry that they don't understand what's going on, nor do they really care, as long as the soma keeps on coursing and keeps on pumping. You know what I mean? That's really what that is. And that is what, not only, people say, well, we're going to get the chip soon. And when we do, golly, well, we already have it. The phone is the chip. Okay. Because whether or not you get a chip, how many people have phones? How many people's lives are on that phone? It's staggering. It's staggering. And they can control all of us through it.
It makes me wonder, like, percentage wise. I might have to do some research and look into this, but before the advent of the smartphone, I wonder what percent of the population was online, because not everybody had a home computer or could afford a home computer. Right?
I'll tell you what, though, I was a computer junkie,
right?
Like
me too.
In high school,
so
I know what I mean. But but I didn't like rule my life because you couldn't, because everything was so slow.
Right, right. And so once the smartphone was invented, right? Like we'll just say the iPhone. I mean, there were some precursors to the iPhone that had internet connectivity or whatever, but we'll just say that the broad adoption of the smartphone was with the iPhone. How much of or I wonder what percentage of the population
We're connected, would you say?
ended up that that never had internet access or never all of a sudden was able to go online, right?
Yeah.
And
Because remember, you didn't have the throughput. You didn't have networks that could handle anything I mean, it took like 2 hours to download an MP3.
and I think it allowed a lot of the, I would say, I mean, you always had an element online, but
Right.
I would say the smartphone allowed the worst elements of society to now all of a sudden have access to the net and have a voice.
Oh
and be
man,
out
yeah,
there.
you know what, man, you're absolutely right. So as beneficial as it has been to opening up or creating connections on a global scale, right? Like I could talk to somebody from Djibouti tonight, and it's no biggie, right? But and the transfer of information and the establishment of like a human knowledge repository, hugely beneficial, but the pendulum swings the other way and you have the pesky Nigerians, and you have
Right.
all of these people that want to control, and they look at social media.
Or even a lot of like criminal elements.
Criminal
right?
elements, yeah,
Right. Like
right.
look, but before the advent of the smartphone, how many
How did you catfish?
how many gang members do you think had a personal computer at home and
Oh,
were
right,
now,
of course not.
you know what I mean? And now it's like everybody in the hood has got a
That's right.
smartphone and has access to the internet, right?
And it's paid for by the government.
Right,
most
right.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, it's just like everybody now.
But the
is online.
government tagged them. So they think, well, yeah, it's a benefit. Well, in a way it is, I guess you could say. But I call it bagging and tagging. That's what that is. They tag you.
And
So
it's wild because I mean we live in a country to where even if you are poor and homeless, you still probably have a cell phone.
isn't that nuts?
That's
staggering. That's
you might
staggering.
not even right. You might not even have a house to live in, and you
Right.
might be living in a tent city somewhere, but you
Hungry,
still have
hungry,
you still
but
have
you
a
have a
cell
cell
phone
phone.
on you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I mean that just shows how wild and how
And warped things
connected everybody
But warped.
has.
Yeah, and when you say connected, literally connected to you, like they wouldn't
But
you
that's
think
going back
maybe
to what you
sell that
said.
damn thing for some food or something? No. I don't know. If I was homeless, that's what I would imagine. I'm homeless because I don't know. If I'm thinking if I'm homeless, it's because I want to be homeless. Serious. If I'm homeless, I want to be homeless. There's got to be a reason why I'm homeless, because otherwise, I mean, unless I'm forced into being homeless, but I'm not carrying a phone with me if I'm homeless. Just going off of like how I'm thinking right here. If I'm homeless, I want to be homeless. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be associated with whatever. I just want to be left alone. That, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to me that we're moving in the right direction on that front. Meaning like the benefits are not outweighing the risks, and then the damage from them. Because then there's the whole RF side that nobody thinks about or talks about. 5G is great when it comes to giving you that throughput and that instant data pipe to be able to handle just about anything instantly. And that's wonderful, right? But it comes at a cost. And that cost is your health. And humanity is suffering from a lot of ailments that are technology related. And unfortunately, instead of trying to figure out, well, if flooding ourselves with RF is causing increases in cancer and neurological disorders and organ failure and all sorts of other issues associated with RF poisoning, if we got to start talking about that now. And instead, everybody's too focused on liability. Liability.
Right. On top of that, on top of the, what you just mentioned, the physical harm that this could be causing people, then you gotta stack on top of that the psychological harm that social media has on people. People feel like that.
And then you have 3 years lost. You had 3 years lost with COVID for education. Really, think about it. You had 3 solid years where education was already bad in this country, and then it got really bad. And now it hasn't come back. And I am by no means anti-public education or for it. I'm agnostic when it comes to it. All I can tell you is it ain't what it used to be.
Right.
And that's not saying like, of course I was indoctrinated. I went through school, but it was not near the prison culture it is today. Not near it. I mean, it is total and complete control freak indoctrination.
They started implementing that prison culture sort of thing whenever I was in high school. That's when they started.
When they went to school, it's like you can't do that anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, I was in high school when the whole Columbine thing went down, and after that, it was like, let's just run all the students through here like we're shaking down all of the inmates in a facility, right? Make sure nobody's. Yeah, and so. And of course, I mean, public schooling anyways for a while, I mean, it's all Pavlovian training, ring the bell, you move to your next job or your next location or whatever, it's all to train somebody for a 9-to-5 work day, right? You got your lunch that happens at the same time that most workplaces have their lunch, and so it's to prep the students to be entering the workforce.
However, let me say this. There is benefit to establishing good habits at an early age. There's no doubt about it. That's why, I always like to give both sides of it, because there is value to that, because not everybody is going to be a rocket scientist, right?
Right, and people need structure. They need structure in their lives.
They need structure. Yes, they do.
Right, yes.
So in that regard, absolutely, is it beneficial? Sure. But you're right. Make them just smart enough to push the buttons on the HMI, but too dumb to freaking question authority.
That's why, when you have like children that are kind of out of control and the parents are like, you know what, we're going to send them to military school because then they need that structure, and sometimes it helps, and maybe whatever, or sometimes people go to the military to get that structure, and it ends up benefiting
them. I had to do
right.
I did it against my parents' wishes. My parents didn't want me to go in the military, and I knew I needed it. Right. Because without that structure, dude, and I wasn't going to do it by myself. I wasn't.
But, you have, the powers that be and whatever, they use that framework, as a, as a base for a lot of their propaganda and a lot of their.
Yeah. The problem is, and that comes from a position of a lack of understanding. See, because really, and this is, we got to go to break here in a couple of minutes, but folks, the biggest thing to understand is, and there's no secret sauce to this. It really boils down to knowledge is power. So the more you know, the more powerful you are. It's really that simple. So I went through as military and a public school indoctrination. Hell, I was raised a Catholic. You don't get much more indoctrinated than that. And I can tell you that knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you free yourself from that kind of stuff. And that's why you need to immerse yourself in the information that you have access to while you have access to it. And you also have to have, a decent set of decent discernment because, oh man, there's a ton of crap out there too. That's for damn sure.
Right. Exactly.
We got to go to break. We're going to be going to break here. So don't forget, folks, kgradb.com. Go there, get a membership, support Bill and all the good peeps over there, because let me tell you, they're a good group of people and there's some wonderful content, and knowledge is power. Don't go away. Hour number 2 coming up.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy. I'm going to take it for the play. I'm going to take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money-back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Welcome back, everyone. All is empty in the sick bay over there on Joe's end, so I don't know what's going on. He will be back here in a little bit, I'm sure. But yes, welcome back to the Freedom Link. Besides, he's been getting a lot of storms up there in the Northeast, and there we hey the sick bay.
Storms. I'm better now.
Okay, did you teleport back into the sick bay?
I did.
Okay,
Absolutely.
cool.
You know why it's the sick bay, because if it's sick out there. That's why I'm in sick bay.
It is.
He was hanging out.
Oh, there he is. Yes.
Hey,
he was hanging out with the engineer.
Awesome. No, it was more of a bladder emergency than anything else, but I'm better now. Yeah.
That weather, bro, I'll tell you, because you're east of my location, it just has totally changed. What heat? It's gone, dude. It's gone.
Dude, does somebody have their fire pit going out there?
No, those are my solar flaming.
Oh. I was like, who the hell has a fire pit going tonight? Oh, the freaking mosquitoes. Oh, man, they're terrible out there right now.
Over here tonight, it's going down to 52.
Get out of here.
52.
You're gonna open your windows.
This is that moment. Ma, I'm on the air. Kind of deal.
Son of a what did I tell you about that? You don't know about my diet soda.
You know, when we were young, and I'm just saying this, I try to stay neutral because I'm the program director.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Go ahead. Try yes. Yeah.
I mean, I pledge allegiance to the flag. Yeah. You know, remember we did all that stuff back in school?
Yeah.
Do they even do that anymore?
Would you want to?
It depends on where you're located.
Would you want to? That's the other thing. Like,
I mean, I didn't have a problem pledging allegiance to the United States flag.
I didn't either. If anything, but then you look at this is where knowledge is power, right? So you look back and you find out that came from a person named Francis Bellamy. And Francis Bellamy was an avowed socialist who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance. And he did so, believe it or not, before it was this. Do you know what you did it was called the Bellamy Salute. And the Bellamy Salute was this.
Oh
yes, and if you look at historical photos, that's how kids used to salute the American flag, and then after World War II, that became
Oh, you guys just taught me something. See,
that was called the Bellamy Salute, so they made people put their hand over their heart.
I mean, this is why the Freedom Link is very important to watch, folks. It's almost like the Dio thing when. I'm just going into the metal part. You guys know that his grandmother, it was like the whammy, what this turned into, and it became something else.
Yeah.
Like the devil horns, but that's not. It was something his grandmother showed him to ward off evil spirits.
Right. It was an old Italian symbol for warding off evil
Don't
spirits.
Let the facts get in the way of good stories, Bill. It's Satan.
I had made it all the way. Anyway, guys, continue. Great show. Awesome. See, I learned something. I jumped on.
I'll find some pictures of children back in the early 1900s doing the Bellamy salute, and it'll blow your mind, dude.
I really didn't know that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's why I don't typically do that kind of stuff anymore, because
it's good. It's
really sick.
It's always good to know the origins of a lot of the things that people
take part in a ritual, right? Because sometimes you don't know what ritual you're taking part in. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. All right, guys, have a great show. I'm out.
All right.
That was Bill, everybody. Just so everybody knows, Bill, of course, the great producer here at KGRA-DB, the program director, the big kahuna, if you will.
The big kahuna. And so glad that he does so much behind the scenes, and so lucky to have him handle crap, because I know I couldn't. And so that brings us to the next issue. And of course, when things start to go south, and you can go on YouTube and look up a documentary I did with Aaron and Melissa Dykes, 2016-ish.
where we talk about the obsolescence of human labor. It's called obsolete, but it goes so much deeper than that. They understood from the get-go that benefits and that basically the system wasn't sustainable. We'll just put it that way. And they had to get away or a pathway to something where benefits were going to be sustainable, because once human labor becomes obsolete, you got a big problem. How do people sustain themselves? Because when labor becomes obsolete, money becomes obsolete, because the whole reason why you have money is to make your labor translate to tangible stuff so that you could go and get a dozen eggs and you could get a couch or you could buy a car or you could do anything like that, because you weren't bartering something. You know, if the guy selling cars didn't want cabbage, then you ain't getting a car. But if it translates to money, well, that's great. Well, now human labor being obsolete, that's a problem. Which is why you see these experiments also with these minimum wage or living wages that they like to pay, and these experiments. But according to activist posts, the vast hordes of Americans are being forced out into the streets as the middle class disintegrates. I would not have in my entire life ever thought that a house in the neighborhood I grew up in would be have such interest. We'll put it that way, on one hand. And on the second hand, the lack of affordable housing. Did you know that the median house price in the United States is $345,000 right now?
That's wild, dude.
That's the middle of the road. Who in their right mind, who can pay for that? I don't know any. I can't. Who can afford that crap?
I used to remember it being, maybe getting close to 100 grand, something along those
The
lines.
houses in my neighborhood, right? I think my folks, when they bought my house, we moved into that neighborhood. I was 3, right? So, and they've been in the same house ever since. But the house across the street from us was selling for it was listed at $270,000. These are starter homes, dude. Literal starter homes. People have fixed them up over the years because now they're 50 years old, but they're not that. And then people are bidding $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 higher than asking price.
Easy.
Because there's no inventory. So it's like, what the? Do you not see? Maybe. What do you think? Do you see the government coming in, or some sort of entity, or something where? Because I start to see it now with the tiny homes and the homeless. But I wonder if they don't institute some sort of program where they mandate employers, like a tax, almost like a payroll deduction, where employers
house their workers
to do something, or it goes into a pot that builds houses.
Well, a lot of it has to do with these corporate entities just buying up all this real estate, buying up all the house. Look at BlackRock; they're just buying everything left and right, and then
they're creating a shortage to bump up prices and then dump them all.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have that,
but I think they didn't
anticipate.
I honestly didn't think they anticipated the inflation. So now here the thing is they have to sustain it. They have to sustain the values. That's it, Scotty. You know what? That's right. They have to sustain the values through this storm of high interest in the hopes that one day it comes down and people can start to buy them at that high price, because right now they can't. So or they're being forced into it and they're paying way too much for housing, in which case you got another problem on your hands, especially if people are using more adjustable rate mortgages where in 5 years your interest rates spike, or maybe they go down. I don't know. But I just don't see this ending well. And then renters are how do people afford housing? And then on top of that, look at your power bills. Look at the gas bills, Do you know what my last electric bill was this month? I just got it. $666. $666, dude. What the F? Now, Massachusetts and Connecticut are one of those green states, yes, because everybody has solar panels on their roofs, and everything in every field has solar panels. So I want to say our grid up here is about 50 to 60% renewables. And boy, do you pay for it.
How's the solar panels working with all that rain y'all been getting up there?
I don't know. I don't have them. I wish I did. I'd have cheaper electricity.
You had to find somebody and ask them, hey, how's that going?
Yeah, 666. I was like, oh man, no shit. Like that. Of course, it's 666, right? Why not? The electric bill, yeah, of course. So yeah, So I wonder, even for somebody like we're middle class, right? But single income house, and what happens when significant other or other family member fall ill, and then you got to take care of them,
right?
There's no leeway when you're paying, a $350,000 house. Then you got taxes.
Right. I mean, so many people now are just living right on the edge. They're just
on the edge. I mean, I don't know how they're living. I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable. No. The thing is I don't understand how it's sustaining itself at present. That's what's baffling me right now. I don't quite understand what's going on.
There used to be like nest eggs and stuff you could fall back on and things, to prepare for any sort of unforeseen event. But now, I mean, it's like if something happens,
I almost think it's a product of the boomer wealth. So the boomers are the last, that's where most of the wealth is concentrated, the baby boomers. And they were able to sock away a lot more than they probably anticipated they did or could. And I want to say that the Gen X and the later generations that haven't been able to sock them away are probably in some way living off the wealth from the boomers in a trickle-down effect, either by the boomers dying and leaving it behind,
right?
Or the I can't spend it when
trust fund or whatever.
I can't spend it when I'm dead, so I'll spend it while I'm alive. That kind of thing. So I think that has that's probably a contributing factor in some way, shape, or form. But when things are this expensive relative to the average wage.
And to be clear, though, I mean, this is also one of those things where all of a sudden you start seeing like the divide and conquer strategy, where they're trying to pit one generation against another generation, right? Where you have all the like millennials and Gen Zers are like, it's the boomers' fault that we can't do this and we can't do that and we don't have access. It's not the boomers' fault. First of all, the boomers just took advantage of an incredibly awesome economic situation that existed at the time. It's not their fault. It's the fault of economic policies and the system, right? that has created the conditions in which you don't have that same opportunity or economic ability that the boomers had, right? It's not the boomers' fault.
You can't fault them for getting pensions when they were offered to them. What were they going to say?
Right.
No, I don't need that. Of course you're going to take it. You would take it. I would take it. Hell yeah, I want a pension. You know? Problem is, those systems aren't sustainable where corruption exists and inefficiencies and things like that. Plus, you know, the stock market is really, if you think about it, to me, it's more controlled than Las Vegas. Now, you can go to Vegas and you can get lucky. Anybody can, right? But they really do have their ways to make sure they're profitable. They wouldn't be the gambling industry wouldn't expand the way it does if they weren't making money. So there's ways, you know, that you can cheat the system or.
And yes, I do understand. And I do understand.
A gambling outfit, you know what I mean? That's what I guess what I'm trying to say is like the system's as if not more controlled than Vegas. It's gambling.
Right.
And everybody's pensions and everybody's retirement is tied to that.
And I do understand that there are a lot of people from the boomer generation that are in positions of power, right? That, you know, became politicians or heads of corporations and whatnot, and may have, you know, been part of shaping the system the way it is, right? But it's not all of the boomers' fault. It's not Grandpappy's fault that, you know, he had, and that's the thing, right? So, you know, you talk about identity politics and all of this stuff, right? It's just like, if you're old and you have a little bit of money, right? You got your own house, and all of a sudden you're an evil person. You're one of those boomers. You ruined the economy for us.
Well, remember too that those generations also didn't have the communication pathways that we have now. And when I mean, sometimes it would take a week for news to trickle down to some of these areas.
Right.
So there wasn't the cult of personalities and these and identities being tied to things are so much more important now than they were then, only because you have so many people, more people now to draw on than you did before. You've got armies of people now that you didn't before. Now, let me show you this. So Jay Watt says, time to tax the rich 90% after 10 million, just like Roosevelt did back in the day. Do you want to do that before you fix the system? Maybe we got to fix what's broken first before you tax everybody more. Because that's the issue, you know, is that, yeah, I get it, you know, pay your fair share and all that kind of stuff. And it pulls at the heartstrings, right? It hits right here. But that's what it's designed to do. And unfortunately, that's not the way the country was meant to run, where it had a graduated income tax. It's unconstitutional. And so if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. And the first thing that you should do before you go and tax everybody is like, do we need 900 military bases in over 180 countries?
Right.
Can we get away with like 300 or 400? Perhaps
there are plenty of other ways, right? To you know.
I'm just saying. So we start there.
Yeah.
You know, kind of start there. Kind of weed them out a little bit. Then cull the herd. Not population control. We're doing that. We're doing that just fine to ourselves because people can't afford to have kids. You know, people can't afford to have kids.
I mean, just a fraction of our military spending could actually fix our
transformational, man.
Yeah, it could fix like our entire, you know, medical system and healthcare and all of that stuff. Like you could have a decent healthcare system if we were able to reallocate that funding from military spending over, right.
The next spending bill, we make it adjusted for inflation, but make it equal to $1959 spending bill. So you have to bring it down to that level. All across all, and that means if that department didn't exist, then so be it. Bye.
Wow.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're flush with cash. Like, oh, we paid off the national debt last week. Ha ha! Oh, this is great. It's like, okay, that's how you do it. Get less government, not more government. Jesus.
You know how many people at the DOD and the Pentagon would be absolutely crapping themselves?
Oh, yeah, but think about it, though. Think about during that time, we were pumping more money. We had more damn shit. Well, I mean, it was at that time post-World War II, but it was getting into, like, end of Korea. You just decommed, like, the Missouri. I think the Missouri was the only one in commission for a little while, but you decommed the other battleships. You're right. Maybe that was a bad time. Maybe we should do it more like 1965. Why not that? Oh no, that was worse. That was worse.
It's wild, man.
Yeah, I know.
There are so many other ways that we could.
Look at all that money.
Yeah, there's so much money that we waste and we spend on so much stuff, and then people go and they go, well, the solution is to tax the rich. No, it's not. That's not the solution.
No.
We need to get all of this government spending under control.
Yeah.
And that's taxing the rich is like the last thing you would probably need to worry about.
The only thing I could say there is have some solace in the fact that if they're not charitable with their money and they hoard it and people are hungry and all that kind of stuff, that they'll have to answer for that later on when it's time to level up. That's the only thing I take solace in that. It's not for me to say, hey, your success, I need to share in your success because you were successful.
Right.
Although, and you can have whatever arguments you want about, is it fair? Do certain people get a leg up? Of course they do. I mean, life's not fair. Some species don't get a leg up. If you're going after a bear or trying, you have no weapons and the bear comes, that's not fair. You were walking down the path that day and the bear showed up. So
there's a reason why not every single person in this country is the CEO of a company and
it's like Carlin said, it's a big club and we're not in it. That's right.
Right. And look, some people just aren't cut out to be CEOs and leaders and whatnot. I mean, humans are a wide range of individuals, and some people are leaders, some people are followers.
Well, but then, here's the other thing too. Before the social safety net, charity was a much, much bigger part of American society.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there was no food stamps. You had bread lines. What do you think would happen if we had no food stamps today? You'd have bread lines. You would have refugee camps. You would have the visual representation of just how broken the system is. But the system hides it by EBT, by Section 8, by Medicaid, by all of these things. That's not to say that people don't need a hand up, but handouts over time get abused and they drain the system
and they create dependencies. Right.
And then it's a perpetual thing and they control. It's a control mechanism. And so when they run out of money, what do? They raise your property tax, or they raise the income tax, or they raise the other 500,000 invisible taxes that we pay to combat or to maintain the smokescreen, if you will. But inherently, the system is still broken. And I have another this is an interesting one because, as I said, charity kind of took center stage before there was the social safety net, but we still rely heavily on charity still, especially in the arena of the homeless, right? So the homeless, while there is a there are things to help get people off the streets and programs, they're being drained by illegal immigration, which that in and of itself wouldn't be a problem if there wasn't a social safety net, because then everybody would be on equal footing anyway.
There'd be no incentive.
There'd be no incentive. You wouldn't have the flood to the border. So this Brunswick news here is interesting. A Colorado homeless shelter votes to unionize, citing work conditions, lack of pay and support. So that's the first time I've ever heard of a homeless, any sort of charitable organization, a 501c3 unionizing or wanting to unionize. It's like,
interesting.
It's a charity, dude. It's not meant to be a business endeavor, you know? It's like, what are we doing here? So it says employees of the Denver nonprofit working with homeless youth voted to unionize their workplace, making Urban Peak the first homeless shelter in Colorado to unionize. And of course, it was the Service Employees International Union, which of course is about as what you would consider left wing as, say, like the National Teachers Union and things like that. They're very, very, very left wing. So this is after more than a year of organizing, with workers citing problems such as large workloads, high rates of turnover among staff, inadequate training and resources, poor handling of responses to trauma, and punishment for speaking out. It's a homeless shelter. When you go for a job to a homeless shelter, Scotty, okay, let's do a little bit of let's just do a little bit of role playing here for a second. So you are going into a job for a homeless shelter, right? Just a regular schmuck interacting and helping out, right? Because is there like a structure to a homeless shelter? I'm sure you have a manager of the place or whatever, but you're going to a homeless shelter. You're not making widgets. What would you expect going in there? What kind of job would you say that would be? Like, what's your mindset going into that place?
Well, I would think that you would at least be, providing services for the homeless people that are there, right? Like giving them food, giving them clothes, providing them a place to sleep, and making sure that they're comfortable or whatever.
I mean, do these people, you think their manners are probably the best?
I was about to say, the kind of individuals you're dealing with in a homeless shelter, you're probably dealing with addicts, right? You're dealing with mentally ill people. You're dealing with a lot of the members of society that are very depressed, that are,
they're not tiptoeing through the tulips. You know what I'm saying? They're
right. You're dealing with people that could have violent outbursts at any moment. Police probably have to be called regularly to a homeless shelter, and I mean, if you're going to get into that line of work, then you got to know what you're getting into, right? It's interesting because, I mean, Colorado, is this in Denver?
It's Denver, yeah. Of course it is, and I mean that's
Denver is like becoming kind of the new Los Angeles, right?
Yes, it is.
The leadership of Colorado has really, turned that state into kind of like California, 2.0 or whatever. So Yeah, I'm sure they're dealing with. I sympathize with the people working there. I'm sure that
Me too.
the
It's
thing
probably really crappy, man. It's
yeah,
probably a real fog.
I'm sure the stuff that they have to deal with over there is pretty taxing
Pretty tough.
and mentally draining.
But
Having to deal with that on a daily
providing
basis.
service, right? Listen to this. Urban Peak was established in 1988 as an overnight shelter in a church basement, and has expanded to a daytime shelter, transitional housing, and case management and support services. The organization has 90 employees and a budget of $9 million for fiscal year 2023, according to CEO Christina Carlson. The nonprofit's funded through grants, donations, and government support. So it's a nonprofit organization that is inundated with how many people? Countless, probably way more than they're used to dealing with historically, right?
Right.
And
The homeless shelter and the services they provide are just a bandage that's not addressing the main problem. The main problem is, why are there so many homeless people in Denver and in Colorado? Why are they being inundated with so many people, right? So yeah, unless you deal with the root cause, then that's never going to end for them. They're going to be providing this.
Yep.
Yeah, you're just treating the symptom. And so
I know. So that's, I wanted to bring that up because I've never seen
that's wild though. I've never
a charity unionized before. That was like, whoa, really? That's crazy.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
It's like, I'm doing a charitable thing. I'm going to help. Well, I mean, I guess if you're a social worker, right? So let's just say you're a social worker and you go there with the intent of being somebody that lines them up with services. And you get so overwhelmed, and I could see how, that maybe that's a way, okay, you got to limit this. I can't do that much because if they keep pushing, but at the same time, now you got a CEO there or whatever that's trying to do the most with what she's got and trying to push for the most help that she can give.
Also sounds like to me, it kind of sounds like they overextended themselves too, right?
Yeah,
like it initially started out as just
kind
of like
hand.
your regular run of the mill, your regular homeless shelter.
Yeah,
but
right?
then they started branching out into like providing all of these different services and all of that, and it became too overwhelming, too much for them to handle.
They went after the grants. That's what it is.
Mm.
See, that's the problem with that. Yeah, okay, I can hire more people. I can do more good. I can do this. Yeah, well, it comes at a cost, right? It's not just a dollar value. And I think they're learning that too, is that when you're ambitious like that, you've got to balance that ambition with a healthy dose of common sense and reality.
And then, every homeless person within earshot or that's able to find out about this place is going to flock there in droves, right? Maybe even
assuming
from other
that's
cities.
What they want, because those shelters typically have rules, such as no drugs, no booze, no. There's standards, and some of the homeless population out there just don't like that. They don't like to be told what to do, hence the reason why they're homeless. So, and I respect.
But when you're providing all of the services I'm sure a lot of people are going to take up that. Yeah. So
I found that interesting. So that's just speaks of like when charities are unionizing. What? That's not, okay. Whatever, dude. That's nuts. Another thing that's going on is the instability around the world. And think what you want about the Jewish state, about Israel, right? And how legitimate it is or not. blah, blah, blah. Those people are human, and they're pretty decent humans over there, the Israeli population. And they're basically doing, Netanyahu's got his government, his coalition government, doing basically what FDR wanted to do to the Supreme Court in the 1930s, which was he wanted to water it down because they kept striking down his New Deal agendas because of their unconstitutionality. And Netanyahu is claiming that the Israeli judiciary is too politicized, and they may be. Our judiciary is too politicized. All judiciaries are politicized. But he wants to change the construct of their judicial system and rein it back in, right? So listen to this. It says, this is DNYUZ.com. It says, for 33 years, Etienne Herzl has proudly dovetailed his career in Israel's vaunted tech industry with reserve duty in an elite commando unit. That's the other thing, too. Compulsory military duty over in Israel. But you have more and more of the citizens telling them to go fly a kite because of these judicial changes. A lot of the military is basically throwing their hands up. And it says the life of service for Mr. Herzl came to a sudden end on Tuesday when Mr. Herzl wrote to his commander to resign in protest over the far-right government's decision to limit judicial power, which he sees as an assault on democracy. And he says, I have an agreement like every soldier between me and my country. Israel is a country that is both Jewish and democratic. If it becomes only Jewish and not a democracy, then that agreement's broken and I can't serve anymore. More than 10,000 reserve pilots, intelligence officers, commandos, military instructors, army medics, and infantrymen have threatened or have resigned from volunteer duty if government pressed ahead with this judicial overhaul bill that was approved by the parliament on Monday. And I'm trying to see what the passage of the law, which pits those with more secular and pluralist visions for the country against those with a more religious and nationalist view, has caused a cascade of social unrest. The law removes one of the tools the Supreme Court uses to override or overrule government decisions. The government, an alliance of ultranationalists and religious conservatives, led by Netanyahu, says this improves democracy by strengthening the power of the elected lawmakers. So basically what he said is, if the government passes a law, the judiciary can't strike it down. So that's it. When the government passes a law, it's Dunsky. What do you think about that? Seems a little bit extreme to me.
And see, I don't see how that strengthens democracy in any way. So
seems like that check and balance is a little.
Sounds like somebody wants a little bit of the. Somebody wants the executive to have a little more of that balance.
Netanyahu's
judiciary, right?
He's always been kind of like a Putinish kind of guy. I've always looked at him and Putin as like birds of a feather, in a lot of ways, and it's a shame too. One of my favorite Israeli prime ministers was Ariel Sharon, because he was such a freaking fire. I mean, just a ball of fire, that guy.
He was the dude that fought in the 7-Day War, right?
Yeah.
And he was like a tank commander or something like that.
Yeah, Sharon was one tough cookie, man. And but he wasn't an expansionist. He wasn't he kind of was trying to heal some really, really long-standing tensions and just didn't have enough time. And then a stroke took him out.
Right.
But Netanyahu was always seen as a hawk. It would be like the equivalent of Lindsey Graham being elected president. We would
Right.
we would be at war everywhere if that was the case. There would be police actions up the wazoo. We wouldn't have Nigeria wouldn't be a problem anymore. That wouldn't exist, I'm sure. And
right. If you took a neocon and then injected him with steroids and put him, in power, that's kind of like Netanyahu's sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's very, very hawkish and very.
I wonder if we're not seeing some sort of in this country. You notice that as you also have this divide, it's also going. States are starting to identify like red state, blue state. You notice that, and the ones that go and buy into that. I wonder if we're not seeing like a start of another type of civil war or something else coming out. And I hate to say that.
There's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of
if you look striking.
If you look at a lot of the events that were the precursor to the Civil War, right?
Yeah.
You had it where these states kind of just started grouping together, kind of identifying as, hey, we're part of this, you're part of that. Then things started getting really, really nasty politically, right? But beforehand, to the point to where you had, what was it? The senator from South Carolina beating another senator with his cane or whatever, right there in the, so the things started, escalating to that point. And, you're right. I mean, we're seeing that, where you have like the red states and the blue states and, kind of like, you've also had a lot of this, secession talk over the past couple of years, right? From
Especially up in the Pacific Northwest, you see a lot of that supercharged talk because of just how different
you're starting
relative to those population centers.
And you're actually starting to see it from both sides, right?
Yes,
it used to be kind of where the left is like, look, let's just form our own, socialist utopia, and go ahead and just make California its own country or something, right? And then you have the red states, you have a lot of that talk in Texas because there's a lot of stuff in the Constitution. There's a lot of stuff that.
Say something.
There's a lot of stuff in the Constitution, when Texas
right, huh?
When Texas became part of the United States, there was a lot of like
there's always let me just interrupt you I gotta interrupt you for a second because this is what happens, right? So the brain's over there and she hears rural, right? Now we're talking about taxes, right? And she comes in and says, and they're not telling you about the Sasquatch that live out there in the rural areas too, right? Because you gotta bring us back to Sasquatch. It always comes back to Sasquatch, folks. That's right. Freedom Link is always about the Sasquatch, and we are a Sasquatch fan. Matter of fact, because of our inclusivity, we always include the Sasquatch.
Hey, look, if Kansas ever decides to secede, I am voting for Sasquatch to be our leader.
That's right. But seriously, so get this. So you're seeing populations also rebalance along those lines. Like, here's a good example. So if you don't know who Grover Norquist is, that guy's been kind of a Washington academic that pushes for tax reform, specifically relating to the income tax, but he gets into analysis from all the states. Well, he says the red states are accelerating the push for no income tax. This is the state level, right? You're seeing a lot of movement to Texas and Florida, right? And why? No state income tax. If you look at what you pay every year to state, it's pretty egregious relative to what you get, the services provided.
And
A lot of
Texas,
people are
I was
fed
going
up
to say
with that.
Texas, whenever because they used to be a country of their own, right? The Republic of Texas. And when they folded into the United States, there was an agreement that was made between the government and Texas that they could secede at any time they wanted to, if need be. So, you hear a lot of that talk in Texas because, if any state was to do it, Texas really would have the ability to actually do it. So
it says here, U-Haul's annual report on state growth found Texas and Florida, 2 of the 7 no-income tax states, had the largest net gain of one-way U-Haul trucks arriving in their borders for 2022. So if you just track the moving trucks, you can kind of see a pattern. It says over the same period, U-Haul had consistently found California, Illinois, New Jersey, and New York, 4 states with high income taxes and high tax burdens overall, to be in the bottom 10 growth states. In fact, California and Illinois are usually fighting for 49th. So there are 7 no-income tax states in the United States. Anybody considering moving, right? You got Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Nevada, South Dakota, Alaska, and Wyoming. And then there's New Hampshire that doesn't tax wage income. And that'll be the 8th no-income tax state on January 1st, 2025, when it completes a phase out of the income tax on interest and dividends. So state personal income taxes were even cut in 20 states over the past 3 years. Even in the state of Connecticut, they actually reduced the income tax because of the exodus of people leaving. Now, they'll do it in a way that they say will promote equity because they're the lower 2 brackets. But when you look at why they're focusing on the lower 2 brackets, it's quite simple. It's because there are no workers left. People, the trades, everybody's moving south to where the houses are being built, to where the infrastructure is being built, and to where the jobs are. So they can't even get people for what jobs they have in these areas.
A lot of
all the talent's moving away.
A lot of tech companies are starting to move to Florida, and they're like, there's a lot of talk about Florida kind of becoming the new Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of tech startups and everything just kind of moving down there, down to Miami, which is pretty.
Yep. Now, Arizona just recently had legislation passed that transitioned their income tax to a flat tax. That is what would be considered constitutional, where everybody pays the same tax no matter what, 2.5%. So they just adopted that in Arizona. And that's probably gonna help them achieve more if they can keep water. That's the only problem with Arizona is they have no water, which is going to be its own set of problems. Kentucky is doing everything it can to phase out its income tax. So in Kentucky, they passed a flat tax. It was vetoed by Governor Andy Beshear, and the legislature overrode it. So the phase out has already reduced Kentucky's flat income tax from 5 to 4.5%, and it's reducing it to 4% in 2024. And they're slowly chipping away at it to try to get it down. So what you'll come to find out is you'll see Kentucky is actually one of those states that are growing. You also have Mississippi, you have Iowa, you have West Virginia, You have Arkansas, Louisiana, Georgia, that are all working on trying to flatten that tax and reduce it, which is pretty interesting that there are so many. But this is the problem. You have leaders that are identifying the fact that, holy crap, look at how polarized things are. Yeah, well, let's take advantage of it. Hey, if these blue states are being this stupid, then why aren't we doing it? Let's make it attractive for people to come here. And it's true that if you lower the taxes, you'll get more people, they'll spend more money, and in turn, you'll get more revenue over time. Where everybody makes the mistake is the services. The services always exceed the receipts. Always. So they always overdo it. Because the legislatures don't really have the metrics required to make those decisions. And then the vision 5-10 years down the road, they can only estimate. And so if it's a lot of these services are just not constitutional. The government was never meant to be, at least in this iteration of our government, was never meant to be nanny, right, or pappy or anything else. It doesn't matter. It was never meant to be that. And you can't have a hybrid that doesn't work. It's not structured that way. So you hear a lot of clamor for, well, we need to have a constitutional convention. You got to be very careful about that, because when you open that, when you do what is it, that Article 5, I think it is.
That's a bit of a Pandora's box.
You open the whole thing up to editing. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And be careful what you wish for. So, yeah. And quite frankly, it's funny, too, because even to this day, just like Aaron Russo documented in America, Freedom to Fascism, with, the fact that there is no law for the income tax. That's not why these people go to jail. They go to jail because you violated a contract. And it's a crime. And that's how they get you. So while it's illegal, and why you're not obligated to pay it under certain things or everything else, they'll get you another way. Just like Irwin Schiff and others found out. Irwin Schiff rotted away in prison. What did he do? He just followed the law. So
that's why a lot of those sovereign citizen types run into their problems whenever they get in there and try to start.
That's another thing. What a great concept. Great concept. Wonderful concept. Grounded in law and everything else, right? But you got to have the numbers, and you also have to have legitimacy. And it doesn't matter what color ink you fill out a form and how many things you do and what you don't do and everything else. If you don't have legitimacy, you're not going to get anywhere. So before you do that and you put that license plate thing on there that says sovereign whatever or personal use only or whatever, just ask yourself, what do I stand to gain by doing this? And even if I do get caught and I try to make a national thing out of it, what possible thing is going to come out of it? And the only possible thing that can come out of it is people are going to be entertained on YouTube as you are being escorted into the cruiser and down to the station and your car is being towed. So that's the issue there. I'm all about protesting and everything else, but that's the wrong way to go about it, unfortunately, unless you have an army behind you, in which case then you have legitimacy. And I think that about does it for us tonight.
Right. I was about to say, maybe if 40% of the population decided that they were going to be sovereign citizens, then things might,
possibly,
but yep.
Sounds like Little Idaho or whatever it is that they want to make out of Oregon out there. That's what they're trying to be. Which, if that's the case, hey, I'm on board, man. I'm coming. But there's a whole lot of other things that have to go along with that before, like jobs or some sort of structure, something. But hey, I'm all for it. We're out of time. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Stay tuned for Popeye. He's coming up next. And don't forget to support KGRADB.com. Have a great week, everybody.